Good morning, Mr. Hudson.
Good morning, Paul. You good?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Al, by the way, welcome all to My Life, My Music. We're going to call this one Christmas Present and Christmas Past. Al, I'm going to start with a quote. There isn't anything that Alan Hudson hasn't done apart from meeting an alien. That was Michael Parkinson. So have you met Father Christmas?
Uh, well, no, I've met quite the opposite actually when I'm playing.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, there's some right wrong ones in the football when I was playing, mate. I met so many bad ones. It was untrue. And strangely enough, I think two, maybe three of my transfers come over Christmas.
Yeah,
It
they
was
did.
I made my debut. I mean, my debut's in Januaries. I would have made my debut in at Arsenal had I not been injured in January, I think. So that is kind of looked at me at Christmas and said, "Here's your Christmas present. Off you go." So, but that never bothered me. Yeah, it was strangely enough. It's like when I had my bad car accident. It was. I always said it was like how you felt, as a kid. The night before Christmas. You look and see your presents there, and then wake up in the morning and there was nothing there. It was that was because I was in a coma for so long. But yeah. But Christmas is a great time of year, isn't it? No matter what, it's it used to be great for football as well, but it's not now. But
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, you alluded to the car accident. You're 73 years of age. You've had 72 Christmases. That one
yeah,
Christmas must have been very, very difficult, obviously for you, but for the family as well. Seeing you in that condition, we have covered that in New Year, fresh start,
yeah,
shine on hoodie when you told that wonderful passage about Betty Shine.
yeah.
And the the way the crucifix come in your sister's house and her boyfriend went running out, he was absolutely frightened. But
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, they're the times around that time. It wasn't until you sit down and look at your whole career and your
yeah,
whole life, and you realise how valuable that year was.
mm,
Although, I always used to say, I'd never get it back. But I'm sure I didn't miss much. But yeah, my family went through hell, mate.
mm,
I know my mother did. My father wasn't here, and I always think that I wonder how he would have reacted to it all, because he was a decorator, and anyone that done him any favours, they would get their house painted for nothing.
yeah.
So there would have been a couple of doctors who would have been pleasantly surprised. And I remember sitting in an office with my uncle one day, Uncle George, and I went to see him about. I think it might have been my colostomy, the colostomy thing. And I was just looking round his office and thinking, a man of his standing, and he's got a pokey little office like this in the Royal London Hospital. And I said to George when I got out, I said, you know what I was thinking in there before he came in? He said, what? I said, my dad would have waited till he went home after work from that office, and he would have sneaked in there and painted it for
Yeah.
him.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's funny how the mind works, at times like that, uh, how there's so much good that comes out of it.
Absolutely. Christmas is in America on the other side of the pond. How do they differ to the Christmases that you had as a kid here and as a player and now as a granddad? Were they very different in America? Because it's more Saint Nick, isn't it, than Father Christmas and Hanukkah?
Yeah, I found in Christmas that Christmas, they have Christmas 365 days of the year over there. When I was there in Seattle, mate, every day was Christmas. It was, especially I'd been on the run from Arsenal for about, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 months. I don't
Yeah.
know how long I was on the run, but I was on the run a long time, and I was on the road running at that time. And he phoned me on the odd occasion, when you're coming back. I said, not while you're there.
Mm.
Terry Neal, the manager. So I thought I was going to slowly drift out of the game. I was
6.
27 years of
Oh.
age.
Mm.
Yeah, just played in the 78 Cup final.
Mm.
And I was good. I was thought, what a way to finish my career. And lucky enough, bumped into Bobby Moore and ended up in the wonderful Seattle, but which is not so wonderful now.
No, I don't think anywhere is as wonderful as it used to be. Christmas films, Al, have you got any wonderful Christmas films or recollections of Christmas songs that particularly as a kid growing up in Chelsea?
Uh, not really. As a kid, I don't. I mean, that's thing I said about the checking the gifts, presents at Christmas and all that. I
Yeah,
remember we used to stay at my nan. The only Christmas I can really recall was when we stayed around my grandmother's, and they were having a party in the front room, and I was sneaking in and out, trying to have a look, what was going on and that. But no, there was the best Christmas songs. From your favourite artists, I
yeah,
think.
yeah,
Um, the John Lennon ones and George Michael's and that. They're standards. How people can make standards out of a Christmas song is quite fantastic, isn't it?
yeah.
Really.
It is. Yeah,
Uh,
and George Michael again. Christmas past was number one, and Christmas present, I believe, is number one again. Last Christmas I gave you my heart. I mean,
yeah,
great lyrics. I mean, a tremendous wordsmith, wasn't he? And a great entertainer as well. It is a time of reflection, Christmas. And sadly, we lost George Eastham the other day. You've lost a number of former players and pals in 2024. And I always look at this period between Christmas and New Year as a time to reflect. So let's just reflect. And let's also talk a little bit about the other podcast that you do with Tony Jimenez, where you talk to some of your former colleagues and friends of the game. You've recently done one with Chippy. You've done many, many over this year. So let's indulge a little bit in that.
yeah. It's great. I'm one of those. I'm one of those people that I'm really surprised no one's ever wrote about it. That one of the really sad things about. I thought of this actually when I was doing the one with Liam. You said Chippy, yeah, with Liam Brady,
Mm,
yeah, and and Matt Letizia actually was near enough. Well, he was more. He was on the book alone really because he never moved anywhere.
yeah.
He but it's the saddest thing. The thing about football is crazy because you can have a roommate and have a best pal at a football club, and then the powers upstairs, the
Mm,
powers that ruin our life. Like I was only thinking yesterday that when I was at Stoke, I was told I was going by Jimmy Robertson, our winger that we got from Arsenal, Tottenham's,
mm,
uh, and Jimmy was about 8 years older than me, and he'd played a game at Ipswich this day. Strangely enough, they played Ipswich when they signed me, and they're saying played at Ipswich when they sold me. So that's another ironic thing. But and Jimmy says, I've been speaking to Terry Neal. He's coming up to see you tomorrow. I said, what about? Was he want to move to Staffordshire or something? He went, no, he said, no, you're going to Arsenal, I think. I went, oh, am I really? So that's, it's like a bolt out of the blue. And then you kind of, well, I am anyway. I'm the kind of person, as soon as I heard that, I was in the office in the morning, and it was a Saturday night. I went for a drink with my mates on the Sunday, and Monday I've just picked up my boots, got on the train, and come back to London. So that was it. And I didn't say goodbye, but I didn't even say goodbye to Mr. Waddington. I was that shocked and
mm.
stunned and disappointed. And then you don't see them people. It Stoke's a bit of a one-off because I returned there a lot over the years, then went back to play there second time and had my nightclub and everything. So I loved the people from the Pottery. So, you know, that was a bit different. But, you know, at Chelsea, you know, Seattle, I returned to Seattle 25 years after and met a few of the lads, and that was great. But, you know, you actually, when you got a roommate and you're like I was good at Chelsea, um, Jeff Salmons at Stoke more so. I would see more of Jeff Salmons than I would of my wife.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy. And then the next one, you don't see him at all, and it's all through football, and it's what people don't realise about this game. You know, it's not like, and you end up out of pocket as well in our day, whereas today they earn fortunes out of it. So you know that's not a very nice Christmas present.
You are almost, as a player, like a Christmas present or like a piece of meat, aren't you? You're just traded. You're there 1 minute and you have no choice. You're being sold. See ya. And as you say, all those friendships, all those, memories of that place that where you were playing, where you were staying, where you were living, your roommates, etc., bang, gone. You've got to start a new one now. You've got to hit the ground running, and you've got to make it happen. You're thinking, hang on a minute, I'm a human being. This is just, it ain't right.
Well, it's not right. It's actually it should be a human rights thing, but
Yeah.
um, you know, things change, and Bosman came along and changed everything, and I suppose that changed. Well, it did change, didn't it? Life changed. Oh, your whole life changed. You know, you never have to worry again where you're going to get your next job or what you're going to do after the game was a big one in our day.
Mm,
You know, I would say 75% of footballers in our days become publicans.
yeah.
Uh, that was the only thing they could do. All they knew was to play football. But yeah, it's a horrible situation, and I'm glad it don't go on. You know, I don't know how the influx of overseas players would have got on with it. You know, it's bad enough going to one club and have to learn the
Mm.
lingo and settle in and everything else. Especially if you're going to Harry Redknapp at West Ham, you know what I mean? You East London with the greys about, you don't know what's going on, you know.
Uh,
But no, it was all parcel of the game, but it's not really not very nice, and that's why I got this thing with Chelsea. They started this one off with me, and for no reason. They made money out of me. They kicked me out, and I've had to suffer ever since. The only reason I've suffered is because I've lived in the area.
yeah.
I was born in the area, and I have to go over and see one of my great pals, Tony Millard, and who runs the Clarence pub in Fulham, and have to go and see him. And Chelsea's what was coming for all the games, and I make sure I disappear, and I'm forever arguing with them, and because they don't understand, they think footballers are just live for 90 minutes a week,
That's
they
all
don't
they
really.
say.
That's all they see,
Did-
and then they judge you on being sold. They judge you on what they read in the newspapers,
Mm.
and they all of a sudden they know you back to front and judge you on that, and then it's just so ridiculous, really. It's great. It's great that they don't know you really,
Yeah.
because I got so the special friends I've got I got two pals of one of my pals I met in 1974 in Stoke is still, well, two of them, it's two of my great pals. Uh, One at Chelsea was been my best pal since 1970, and I never ever, like Peter Osgood used to ever come to different games when he weren't driving and his mates were driving him in because of having a drink afterwards. He would have a different best pal every week, He was the funniest man, He'd always had a best pal with him, So I was, well, I couldn't live like that anyway. I love my friends, and I cherish my friends, and it's something you look back and even my mate that's moved up the road to Cambridge, I don't see as much now. We talk, and I first thing I say, I pick a little subject out for when he was in Seattle with me. He come and stayed with me a lot, and I'd have him crying on the phone, crying with laughter. The things that we got up to and things like that. So we got some really special memories.
Is that Tony Davis?
Tony Davis, a great TD. Yeah, he
TD.
was the one. He was the one that used to come on wherever we go. He was, I remember I hadn't even kicked the ball and we played at White Hart Lane. Arsenal played at White Hart Lane, and I hadn't kicked the ball because I was injured, and I was thinking, and I was watching Arsenal play at this time. They were playing really well, and Chippy was playing brilliant, and little Geordie Armstrong was playing. And I thought, I'm not going to get in this team, and I'm top man at Stoke, and should have been football of the year really.
Mm.
I got a player of the year for Shoot magazine or something, but that was, I think that Shoot, they should have just shot you with that Shoot. And I remember, and Tom said, we're walking through White Hart Lane, he said, well, we got no seats. I said, you come with me, we're sitting on the bench. And we just walked straight down, straight down the tunnel, 60-something thousand people, and he's sitting next to us on the bench, and they all looked at him and said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "Oh, well, I'm Miles, mate. I'm his agent, He was on the pitch at Wrexham when we played up there, and he was on the pitch at Wembley for the cup final. And it's a great sight. He says, "My mum watched the cup final, and she doesn't watch too much football. And she was sitting there having a cup of tea with her friends, watching the cup final, and she said." On the bench where they all sat, he's about 4 rows back. She said, "That didn't half look like my Tony there, sitting on the bench." and it wasn't. He was with 4 of the Arsenal players. They didn't have tickets because Terry Neal had sold their tickets, and he was with 4 Arsenal players. And so they said to Tony, "Where are we going to sit?" So Tony said, "Leave it to me." So he pulled one of those guards up that mind them benches,
Yeah.
with the black suits on. Which, crazy enough, I think one of them might have worked at Highbury on the Marble Halls. And he said, "Save 5 6 seats for us." He said, "We're the Arsenal reserves, we're the ones that should have been subs." So Tony got them seats for the cup final, and that was the cup final when the directors never had in, the day before they had no tickets.
Even the nights were better, and it sounds like the days were as well with TD.
Well, yeah, that was Tony. That was Tony. He had he always thought about the good times, and as I say, I met in Chelsea, and we went everywhere together, and he came to Seattle for 2 weeks and stayed for about 6 months, and that was it. It was. And he trained with. I took him out training, and he showed me a little bit of the other side of being a footballer, and he went, I like the other side of it. I don't like that side of it, your training methods, But it's all great stuff. And, he got to know so many famous people. It was untrue,
Mm.
And that was nice as well, And he's still a Chelsea supporter in his heart.
Yeah.
But he loved his days at Stoke. Great days. Great, you got some great memories.
He followed his
That's
mate.
what Chris, exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Chris was all about the great memories, really.
Evoking memories, and that's what My Life, My Music is all about. Evoking those memories of you throughout your career, time on the pitch and time off the pitch. What other standout interviews have you done on the Alan Hudson podcast this year, Alan? What have you got going, excuse me, going forward in 2025? What former players have you got lined up?
Well, I left a message for Harry Redknapp last week,
Yeah.
and I want to get Jamie on.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Redknapp, but Jamie's a great young lad.
Yeah, great pundit as well, isn't he, Jamie?
Yeah, I've,
I like Jamie. He's impartial, isn't he?
well, he ain't so great now when he's standing next to these women. I seen him last night, but when women are firing questions at you, I don't know why I watch it, but it's because I couldn't be bothered to turn it over and turn it back. But I go out for a drink when the women come on.
Yeah.
Go out and pour myself a drink. But
Crown Royal? Crown Royal?
I'm stocked up at the moment. I met my pal the other day, brought me a litre bottle of Deluxe Crown Royal in.
Ooh.
And when he was there, I introduced him to some friends, and I said, my friend Terry Churchill, actually, he was at Tottenham as a player. Peter Shree's finished his career
Yeah.
basically. And I said, Terry's in shipping. And they started talking about shipping, one thing and another. And he brought me my annual bottle of deluxe Crown Royal in. And he said, this kind of just touched the nerve with me. I said, what's that? He went, well, I do quite a lot of business shipping in Canada. He says, I can get a pallet of Crown Royal over for you. I said, well, why don't you do it? He said, because you don't have all the kind of charges they'll put on
Yeah.
top for you, you know. So I'll be jogging Terry's memory about that. But yeah, I'm well stocked up. I've got one right on the coffee table near me here just to keep me warm. And I'll take one to bed with me, put it under my pillow every night. But I don't want a tooth for that, that's for sure.
And good for medicinal purposes as well, Al, isn't it?
Well, there's drinking and there's drinking. Don't know. You see people in
Yeah.
pubs and they're drinking beer and beer and beer. When drinking and as kids and all that, it just reminds you of the somebody mentioned yesterday £7.50 for a pint up here now. When
Mm,
we were kids, unbelievable. I mean, £7.50 then, mate. That was a quarter of my wages at Chelsea when we got to the
crazy, isn't
cup
it?
final. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
getting all them.
Which really brings it back to George Eastham, doesn't it? I
Yes.
think George, I thought George was one of those people that was going to live forever, you know?
His legacy will, and his legend will live forever. But sadly, he's passed on to somewhere different now. But going back to footballers and changing the game, with the Bosman you alluded to. I mean, George back then, was pretty much involved in the minimum wage, or sorry, the maximum wage being
Yeah,
abolished, and players like Johnny Haynes, who was the first £100 a week player,
yeah.
benefited. And now you look at £500,000 a week, I think they're going to be offering Salah. I mean, all that pretty much is down to George Eastham and players of that time that smashed what was going on, and pretty much said, hey, us players were the stars, we need a bit more dough.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was a kid when George was at Newcastle, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was, yeah. Yeah,
And
63, wasn't it?
he was an extraordinary player, extraordinary person.
Mm,
Um, and that's why I mentioned about talking. It's this Christmas because he lived in South Africa. I
yeah.
don't know what kind of family he's got left, George, but it was one of those you never knew much about.
Yeah.
Um, I did an interview. The first time I met George Easton was the week of the League Cup final in 1972.
Mm,
I used to watch him a lot at Arsenal when I was a kid, and he obviously had a great influence on me. My dad would say, players like him, these creative inside forwards, and my dad was spot on. Um, and George was one of those. And I watched him at Arsenal and couldn't understand how he could do what he did because he always had that kind of gammy knee, didn't he? I
yeah.
don't know if he'd done it as a kid. And he had, I watched the fight last night and I looked at Tyson Fury and I thought of George Eastham, he must weigh about 8 times what George Easton weighed. If he got
Mm,
in a ring with him, it would have been incredible. But George, I done an interview about the League Cup final with him, and then obviously got the winner. I never thought I'd be so happy that he did.
mm,
A couple of years later, because I didn't at that time. I was got very emotional after losing that one, but that happens. It's no place worse to lose than at Wembley. Uh, But he kind of, I thought be great to talk about George for a few minutes because he helped. He don't know, but he helped change my life. Uh, by Tony Waddington buying George Easton really was that kind of put me on that path to going to Stoke. Because of his age, he had to be replaced,
mm,
and I think that day at Wembley when they beat us. Although I didn't have a great game, played all right. Not to, didn't make big a big impact on the game. Um, but he must have watched me. He was a fantastic. Had a fantastic insight to the game, and he must have watched me. He must have watched me that day, and seen me play other times. I played at Stoke a couple of times and played quite well, which was a hard place to go. And I think he penciled me in that day. And it was strange. I heard later on that George kind of didn't agree with the transfer.
Right.
And I thought that's strange because I used to play against George every Friday in the gym for the Saturday match, and he was my hardest opponent I'd ever had. I'd never played against anyone so good, so cunning, so deceptive. He was an absolutely genius of a footballer, and after about 6 months, 7 months, 8 months being at Stoke, someone told me that was with George, and George said it. He said Hudson's the best inside forward that I've ever seen.
Mm.
So it's amazing in that space of time how someone. I always say you can't tell a player until you played with him, and I really believe that. You can watch players. You watch people like Cruyff or Maradona. You can tell their players, but once you've been on the field with them and trained with them and I've been in five-a-sides with them and things like that, you really get first-hand view of how good is it. It's probably like I watch a lot of racing, and when they talk about horses on the gallops and what they're like at home and everything else, to work with them every day, you see all their different ways of the way they work and how they go about playing the game. But George was, I put on the site yesterday. He might have been in a 66 squad and never got a medal, or whatever. Or I don't know if he got a medal. But, excuse me.
You're right.
Christmas, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So I've lost my train of thought.
When George in the World Cup final might not have got a medal, but he certainly deserved to. If he was the manager, he would have played, wouldn't he?
Well, yes, absolutely. He was probably the best footballer in that squad.
Yeah.
And only better than Alan Moore because of his experience. But he was an incredible footballer. But he was one of those players. He probably played a few times for Ramsey, but he would never got in that squad. But when you think that George Easton was in it and Jimmy Greaves was in it, and if we'd have put out our best team, we may not have won it. I don't think it was a great World Cup anyway. Portugal got to the final because of Eusebio, what the impact he had on it. But I think we had 3 or 4 players that, just like really history repeating itself with Southgate,
Yeah. Managers like to play a certain way. They don't like players of skill and great inside forwards. And I guess Tony, going back to Tony bought you for what he knew you could do rather than what you did do in that final. And I guess George looked at you and thought, well, I haven't seen that much of him from afar. But again, when George was training in them five-a-sides with you, he thought, can't get near this kid, Hudson. What a player he actually is. And Tony, what a stroke of genius.
Yeah, I mean that obviously had a lot to do with what his comment. But when I went to Stoke, and it kind of changed my life. And Tony basically was people don't understand how that can happen, but I'm sure it's happened to certain people who've been in a job for so long, and they get a new job and they come across this man who treats them like a bit special, and waking up every day becomes such a joy, and that's what happened really, and it kind of took me back to to my childhood and with my father and the way my father used to treat me as a young player. Never put no pressure on you, never told you what to do, never. He trusted you and he believed in you, and basically that's what football's all about.
Yeah.
You know, we've always say that simplicity is genius,
Mm.
and it is a simple thing that look at Manchester City at the moment; they can't even do the simple things.
No.
Uh, all their passes they're making now were the same passes that they were making when they were winning games,
Mm.
but they just, they're getting a little bit older together. They've been sus. Teams have sussed them out. Uh, you can't believe that a manager can, in 2 years, 2.5 years. I remember sitting in the Grand Canary with Don Shanks, and he just bought Grealish and whatever, and he was going to be, he was superb at Villa, and
Yeah.
he's gone to Man City, and he's just another player.
Mm.
It's
Robotic.
oh yeah, right, but
Mm.
yeah, it become like everybody
Yeah,
else,
they do. Yeah, they just take that genius. They take that maverick. They take that touch of class away from that player and put them into a team to do a job as a unit and don't give the ball away. And now I think teams, you're right, have sussed them. The magic has dropped from Man City, and
Yeah.
teams have sussed them out. And they thought, well, do you know what? If we actually attack this team, they have a vulnerability, particularly at the back, and that's what they've that's what's happened. You
Well,
know,
absolutely, absolutely, and it's and I think one of the points as well is, uh, and I hate to say it, is, and he probably would disagree. They probably got more money than ever wished he'd had.
mm,
The best lifestyle. I see him now, and he looks the happiest kid on earth
yeah,
because he's there because they've been winning so many things since he's been there until now.
mm,
Uh, but now he'll become miserable. And he played against a Villa team yesterday that he left,
yeah,
and they were totally humiliated,
mm,
not by the scoreline, but by performance. And the kid Rogers was just
yeah, sensational, isn't he?
unstoppable.
Yeah,
He was sensational. He was just head and shoulders above anything. And I tell you what, he was going through the Man City past defense. Whether he had got through past Rodri like that, I don't know.
mm,
Rodri might have just been a big thorn in his side yesterday, but he was absolutely fabulous. I mean, and he was like the match winner, obviously, from everything he done, everything he's got that. I did the thing with Mickey Fillery the other day
yeah,
from
brilliant.
Chelsea, and
Mm,
brilliant player. And he reminded me a lot like him, but with I suppose a modern day player.
yeah,
Is he's I mean, the game today is so much different from them because of the pitches and everything else.
yeah,
And you see him guide, and the strength. They tried to knock him off the ball, two or three of them at one time, and he just plows through them but he does it in such an elegant way. It was super performance yesterday. I mean, the manager must be thinking, my God, if we can keep him going now, we'll be okay because that top spot's still up for grabs.
absolutely. And I think again, going back to what we was talking about with George Eastham and Tony Waddington, I mean, he was bought for £8 million from Middlesbrough, and I think he was bought for what he could do rather than what he did do at Middlesbrough, and he's doing it. I mean, if you look in now, you're going, what would you rather have, Jack Grealish or Morgan Rogers? You'd be saying, well, Morgan Rogers. I mean, what a player! The kid looks as though he's got absolutely everything. I thought that goal that he scored yesterday was one of the goals of the season.
Yeah,
It was gold, frankincense, and myrrh all dressed up in one, wasn't it?
yeah, absolutely. And I think the run for the first goal and everything else,
Mm,
everything about his play was, he's kind of one mover. If I don't play chess, but I can only
yeah.
imagine the best chess player. One move ahead of the others.
Mm.
Uh, and excuse me, mate.
You're okay, Al?
Yeah.
could do the spit bucket down like Tyson Fury, couldn't you?
I've
In
got
the
one, mate.
corner while
I've
you're
got a cup
doing
next to
it.
me. Yeah,
How
I've got no.
how did you stop getting colds and flus and stuff like that during your playing days? Because this is the festive time of year, Christmas. I mean, since I've been on this planet, everybody around me, even myself included, generally I'm bunged up with some lurgy. It's everywhere. But did players have that, or did you have injections? How did you keep the lurgy away from your starting 11 and your squad? Because you had small squads in them days. I mean, it's quite easy for a flu to decimate it.
I think we used to play with them, mate.
Yeah, got you. And particularly you
Uh,
were strong and fit, weren't you? Fight
well,
it off.
there was the old when there was 14, 15, 16
Mm,
players in the squad. There was you had to be really bad to not play.
yeah.
Yeah, but you do realise when you think back, you think, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Mm,
Uh, the worst, probably the worst case I've ever heard was the Tommy Hughes standing goalkeeper at Chelsea when the one with Steve Sherwood
yes. Yeah.
when we played Ipswich at home and this is another one of Dave Texans, the honesty, all the honesty comes out in these little shows, but he Benetti was injured. Tommy Hughes had the bad flu,
Mm,
I mean, the real bad flu. And Steve Sherwood was on his way up north to see his family. Wasn't needed. And then all of a sudden, at 12 o'clock, 12, he was needed. They somehow got hold of him. Someone got a message to him to turn around and come back. He was playing if he got there. Dave Sexton went in to see Bobby Robson in a other changing room. That was his mate at Fulham.
yeah. Mm,
And he said to Bobby, the rules are that she should be in for 2:30. How about if our goalkeeper gets here just for the kick-off? Can he play? Can we break that rule? So the referee came in and, he said, Robson said, yeah, sure, of course he can. Fair's fair. And David Webb, at 2:30, David Webb had the goalkeeper's jumper on. He was our right back at the time. And at about 2:45, Steve Sherwood burst through the door, started to get undressed where the goalkeeper dresses, and Webby threw the shirt at him, and then it all went wrong.
mm,
They couldn't do it, so Webby played in goal. He changed his mind. Bobby Robson changed his mind. So we went there. We beat Ipswich 2-0. So we didn't need a team talk that day. That was Bobby Robson's way of how they went about things. But Tommy Hughes told me the story at a dinner, a function, a lunch one day 20 odd years ago, about 20 odd years on. And I said, what happened that day? Sorry, I got mixed up. This is another day when he had the terrible flu and he played against Leeds and we lost 5.
got ya. Yeah.
And because I remember that day he did have the flu. This one, he said, Ron Stewart come round my house. He said, no, I was dressing pajamas on, dressing gown, I was all bunged up and everything. And he said, you better get yourself ready. You're coming in with me. You're playing. So he said, I can't. He said, you will. He said, well, try a whiskey. A whiskey will help you out. So he said, I had a large whiskey. As I was getting ready, I had a large whiskey. Then I was ready. I had another large whiskey. Then about six large whiskeys later, he said, I'm in the Chelsea dressing room. He said, I'm all over the place. Now, now I don't really know if that was Tommy's way of saying that was the reason I was so bad.
Yeah.
He had a stinker, but I'm going to give Tommy the benefit of that with that one, because I've had a few of them, and but I've never really said, I was really drunk, when I was.
Yeah.
But and that's really the only case I can remember, Paul, of a player with that kind of with the symptoms over the Christmas period.
But again, the games come thick and fast, don't they, over the Christmas period? I mean, you if you've got a game, say in the Midlands, you're playing Birmingham and Villa, and or you're coming back from London and you're up the north and you got a Midlands. Do you stay over at Christmas and spend the Christmas away from your family? How
I
did
mean,
that work at times, Al?
to be perfectly honest, I think in the Christmas New Year period, I think I'm not sure. Did we try? They did try and make them London local derbies in them days.
They certainly did back in the olden days. You'd play a game on Christmas Day, then you play the reverse fixture on Boxing Day, wouldn't you? And they did
Yeah.
try and make them local, but I suppose, like anything in football, they then change and move the goalposts, and you end up spending maybe Christmas Day away from your family. Whether that was more in America, I don't know, because you would go on road trips, wouldn't you, in America rather than in England, and certainly over the Easter period, you probably play more games back to back over Easter than you would Christmas. And I suppose there was a lot of unfit pitches over Christmas as well. Also, you'd have a few games called off. Was that a bit of a relief? You could then tuck into your Christmas dinner, or would the gaffer have you out training? What was the dynamics like as a player at Christmas time?
Well, I'm not. I wasn't a Christmas kind of person anyway.
Yeah.
I think as I said, it was in Seattle. It's 365 days a
Mm,
year, and
yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
kind of was that way at Stoke as well.
Mm,
We had a really good social team at Stoke, although there was only it was a five-a-side team, six-a-side team, but we certainly had a good time. But yeah, no, I was one of those that rather play the game.
mm,
I didn't like it when games were put off, and one year was put off, and I was at Stoke for the second time, and uh, my best friend Tony Lacey took over, and who I've ended up probably leaving the club because of retiring because one of the reasons. He had us training all the pitches, training pitches. Every pitch was unfit, and he had us training inside the ground and running around things inside. And I thought, what's your problem?
mm.
You give someone a job, and they try to. I told him I tried to get him to put a cup match off one night, and that was his claim to fame to be manager of Stoke one day. I said, well, that's as far as you're going to get if you play this game tonight. You'll be finished, and that happened. We got beat by Luton at home on an icy pitch, and he shouldn't have played because
Mm.
our goalkeeper Peter Fox wasn't fit. We put a young goalkeeper in, no experience, and we had to pay the price for his stupidity and his ego.
It's quite unbelievable, really, isn't it? But again, they have no real grounding or no qualifications to do the job. I mean, you're by definition, you fellas are as fit as anything. You're as fit as a fiddle. I mean, there's no body fat on you. Um, Even back then, I mean, it gets me when they say, "Oh, the players are fitter today than what they were yesterday." You're having a laugh, ain't you? Look at them pitches that the players used to have to play on. They played in every condition, kick from pillar to post. There ain't a player alive today that could have played back in those days. So, really, if the games are all off, let the boys enjoy the Christmas, have a few mince pies, etc., and what have you, and just enjoy life. What's the point in running around in the Victoria Ground or Stamford Bridge or just to get a bit of fitness? The last thing they need is more fitness. Give them a bleeding rest.
Well, it wasn't until I got to Stoke the first time around that
Mm,
um, we got to Friday morning, which was, like kind of eye-opening for me. We got to Friday morning and went in my first Friday, and Alan Acorn, who was a coach with along with George Eastham at that time,
yeah,
he just took us on the track. We done a couple of laps. We done a dozen sprints or something, a few stretches, and he said, "You can do what you want now. You can go and have a bath, or you can go upstairs, and those who want to have a five-a-side, and to sharpen up, do so." And that for me is what Friday should be all about.
yeah.
It would, what it and had this thing that you've done enough all week. You're exactly what you just said.
Mm,
You're fit enough now. You're not going to get no fitter. Friday fitness don't come into it. Tactics, I don't know. We never had no tactics at Stoke at all. We
mm,
never spoke anything tactical. When Tony Waddington bought a player, it was it's kind of like I go back to what I used to when I was writing books, and it was like his jigsaw puzzle. He bought a player to put into that position. They were good enough to play in that position. He didn't have to tell them how to play. They knew how to play,
Mm,
and they just fitted in perfectly. It was unbelievable. It was the most simple period of my life I've ever known. And then you go to Arsenal and you got Terry Neal getting the Cowboys and Indians that's out on the table, and he puts the Cowboys in the middle and the surrounds them with Indians. He said, "That's how we're going to play today. We're going to be like the Indians. We're going to surround them." So this is the up and down side of the football game. But yeah, the thing is, Stoke, I thought, this is great, because I do love a five-a-side on a Friday. I used to love my last sweat out on a Friday because.
mm,
Uh, as I rarely, rarely drank on a Friday night. Only I didn't even dream of it. Well, first time I did it with Chelsea, I couldn't believe we played at Man City and the boys went down the pub. I really couldn't believe that. And when I went to Stoke and they went to London, and all the boys were at the Russell Hotel at the back in the pub there. But I didn't really used to drink on a Friday, and I'd never drink on a Friday in a home game. So and nor did the others. But it seemed to be when they went away.
yeah.
I couldn't understand it.
Going back to Terry Neal, was you tempted? Well, if we're the Indians, boss, does that make you the cowboy?
Well, he certainly weren't a chief. I know that. But that was, he's just, you just can't believe it. I mean, I never heard Liam Brady say a bad word about him. Liam was just so laid back. He was so the opposite of me,
Yeah. Mm,
I mean, I'm laid back, but I just get on with life, and what they throw at you, I'll take. But he kind of agreed with me.
mm,
He said Terry was really, really, very, really selfish in everything he did. Which really, really summed him up.
mm,
Uh, And there was a time at Chelsea and maybe a little period at Stoke that there could have been a revolt.
yeah.
We really did nearly revolt at Chelsea against the management.
Mm,
Uh, one night on tour when we wanted to speak to Sexton and he said he was going to come down and talk to us and never turned up. We were really within our rights to to say we're not playing no more
mm,
until City sort it out. And that is the way we felt about it. We used to have team meetings sometimes on the way home from games within our little
yeah.
band of players, six,
Mm,
7, 8 players in the King's Road.
mm,
We used to have half an hour, 40 minutes talking about the game where it's all going wrong, and then enjoy ourselves that thereafter. It was we needed we needed the manager there, and
mm,
that's what happened when we went on tour. We wanted Sexton to sit down because, the hurtful thing is you care so much, and yet the manager don't want to sort it out. You know, he thought at that time, I think, that we were sitting around. We'd been on a boat trip, and we'd all had a few drinks. We'd gone and showered up. We were perfectly fine. He thought that it was going to get a bit out of hand, I think. And I don't think he should have worried about that because his dad was a boxer,
yeah.
and he'd done a bit of boxing, and the him and Osgood thing with the fighting, how that never happened is a minor miracle.
And I guess the three wise men in your career, your dad would have been the one wise man. I'm guessing Tony Waddington would have been the second wise man. Who would the third wise man be during your football career, Al?
Good question, mate. Good question. Uh, well, the only person really ever that I ever listened to was Bobby Moore.
Yeah.
Uh, that most certainly was. Without my father, I would have ended up like all the others, the window cleaners, and earning more money.
Mm.
All tea leaves. That's how you survived in them days.
Yeah.
Uh, and my dad kind of passed me on to Tony, but along the way, Bobby Moore was, somebody that if he said something to you, you'd listen.
Mm,
And you knew, or I knew that he was trying to help. It was so common sense, and he took time out,
mm,
and he didn't do it to everyone or whatever. He wasn't one of those people. I'm not like that. But I don't like people like that in general. That poke the nose. But Bobby was, if he liked you, he took a bit of a shine to me.
mm.
You see, I was going off the rails a little bit. He's obviously been following me from the other side of London, and he was just fantastic. He had a pop at me when I was on the run from Arsenal and said, "Come on now," he says, "you're going to regret this if you don't get back in the game. You're 27. You should be out there playing now. You've got so much still to offer you for your own good. Please go in the other room and speak to Jimmy Gabriel." He said, "I've been to Seattle. Whatever you do, you've got to start playing again." And that was just anybody else who said that, I wouldn't have really took much notice. Uh, yeah, so the third one was probably more. The only other one I could think of was myself,
Yeah.
because as I grew up a little bit, I was a little bit like that with youngsters anyway. With
Mm.
youngsters at all the clubs I was at, I'd always try and help them out.
Again, it's passing on advice, isn't it? When you see them young players and the ones that have got that talent that just need that little bit of education, that little bit of advice. And obviously that's what Bobby saw in you. I mean, Bobby Moore, one of the great leaders, wasn't he? I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I think I it could have never worked with me because the damage was done.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, but the advice he gave me was the best advice.
Mm,
You couldn't get any better advice from a person, the only English person that captained the English World Cup winning team. It doesn't mean that they were right. It
mm,
doesn't mean that it could have been Jack Charlton who was captain that day,
yeah.
or
Mm,
or Martin Peters or someone. But
mm,
Bobby, the greatest advice was common sense,
yes. And that's not very common.
and he just said you only become a world class, world famous footballer if you play well for your country.
Yeah.
Because nobody really, and I suppose those were in the days when there was no Sky TV and you
Mm,
couldn't watch the German football and the Spanish football and this and there was none of that in them days. When even when you played in Europe, you didn't know who you was playing against. You didn't know when we played Real Madrid in the final, we didn't know any of their players. Whereas today they could watch him play and think, oh. It probably was a good thing in them days because Real Madrid were a good team, and we might have, not that I don't think we would have feared them because it wasn't the way we were. We went in really to enjoy it, and we did enjoy it. I suppose the only thing we didn't enjoy, well, they did enjoy. I never enjoyed was I think we went through on one of the shows, didn't we? I think we got 5 divorces that year with
British
uh,
Caledonian and
with
British
British
Airways.
Caledonia, British Airways, and you name it, and that. Uh, and then the night down Alexander's with 4 of the boys were Panch people and things like that. I mean, it was absolutely crazy, but it was fantastic, clean fun. It was all good stuff. And if it happened today, I mean, if it happened today, it'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
To see these
Mm,
players, enjoy themselves like that is great. I mean, and I don't care what anybody says. I'm not one for having a drink before a game and getting drunk before a game. I did it twice, I think, in my career, and they was for reasons that Chelsea really pushed me to. Really,
mm.
uh, but I'm not one for that. But as Brian Clough always did, he used to have a few drinks with the boys before a night before the European Cup ties, and they actually won it 2 years in a row. So.
Mm.
it isn't something that you'd really write down and say, well, we're all going to do this now, because it's not. It was meant in a totally different way from any other manager would do it.
Yeah,
You
just
know.
calm the nerves a little bit. I mean, Saunders used to have a bottle of brandy in the kit bag. Villa players used to have a bit of a swig before they went onto the pitch.
Yeah,
Leeds
yeah.
United, I think they used to have a tot of
Well,
some
they did in
as well.
Stoke, mate.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'd never seen it before. As the
Mm,
players were going out of my first match against Liverpool, the bottle of brandy and a bottle of scotch and a bottle of brandy there, and they used
yeah.
to call it uh, the team spirits on the side, they say. And I can never forget, we couldn't get the bottle out of Jackie Marsh's hands. God, mate, he did make a mess of it. But yeah, I mean, that's especially when you're training the way you train and everything else. But it can be a bit of a hindrance if you let it go too far. I can name a couple of players it
Mm.
ruined, but that's it's not that time of the year to do so.
It may have made Jackie Marsh's eyesight slightly better, or made him run a little bit quicker as well.
Well, Jackie was one of those that lived on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
He wasn't the most confident player. He was one of those that he would be quiet as anything, and then the next thing you know, he'd have 3 or 4 pints, and he would be speaking like me. Uh, he'd have a London accent. So he was that kind of character. But that's going from Chelsea to Stoke was kind of like that.
Yeah.
To go into a different kind of dressing room and with completely different characters was another. Although it ended up well, it was a great challenge.
But you're looking at dressing rooms, and I mean, that Chelsea dressing room that you grew up in must have been a theatre. I mean, that is an iconic team, isn't it? Okay, they didn't win as many FA Cups as they should have. They didn't win the league championship. They didn't win as many things abroad as what they could have done, maybe. But they were absolutely iconics, and the stories that you've told through My Life, My Music over the years about that Chelsea team, you just wouldn't get those stories, I don't think, from any other team, and you certainly wouldn't today. They were just filled with characters, and they were like a band of brothers. They were like Jesus's disciples, wasn't they? In a very
Well,
different way.
I can only say that was all down to Tommy Docherty. Really. Tommy Docherty
Yes,
was
yeah,
he made all them
yeah.
made that happen.
Mm,
Uh, because when I was a Fulham supporter and Chelsea were playing there, I believe that Chelsea, the team that Docherty had, would have went on and cleaned up. I
yeah.
really do. I think they were
Mm,
that. They were all, because they was around about the right age. All right, tinker with it a little bit. It goes to prove that the players like George Graham in the team. You say we didn't win the cups and all that, but
mm,
we I think the stadium was the greatest hindrance. They had a dog track and
yeah.
their fans were too far away. I said to someone the other day, if we'd have played in this, one of the ex-Chelsea players, we'd have played in this stadium, we'd have won the league. Don't worry about
Mm,
that, because that'd have been worth another 8, 10, 12 points. Playing at home, especially if you watch Chelsea play now, they win games when they shouldn't, if it's the crowd that wins them the game or
mm,
whatever. But the doc started that, and it was really probably he would put it down to the coaches, the scouts, the scouting system. They talk today about their scouting system, whatever they call it, the people that work upstairs, recruitment.
mm,
Well, it was the scouting system at Chelsea that
yeah.
was, and strangely enough, one thing that will have to take to a grave with me, they never scouted anyone in Chelsea. It was unbelievable.
Crazy,
Uh,
isn't it?
yeah, they unbelievable. They got all the boys from East London,
Mm,
and Tommy Docherty did his recruitment or scouting in Scotland. And we used to have a lot of, we did a show last year with Jimmy McCalliog,
yes.
uh,
Good lad.
Jimmy and Fred, his brother, come down. I asked Jimmy how Fred was. He sadly died, I think. But
Indeed.
you know, people like Jimmy would come down, a great player. Uh, and as I said to him, I wish he'd have stayed and I could have played in the team with him because he played my kind of football.
Mm.
But yeah, it was Doherty's, Jocks, and the East Londoners. Uh, and actually, there's still there's I think there's still really a hotbed over there.
Absolutely.
Where now there's Chelsea is gone now.
Mm.
You wouldn't find anyone around here now. It's just not Chelsea no more.
And it's a shame. Again, a case of like, if only that if the Doc would have stayed, you know, how would Chelsea have progressed under Tommy Docherty with the new young kids coming through, with the more established players then that would have been older. And football is, we've always said this, isn't it, Ali? It's a game of fine margins and if onlys and sliding doors moments. Call it what you like, but sometimes it just happens where it falls to pieces at the seams, and that's pretty much what happened to all your clubs. You was never sold for footballing reasons. Clubs seem to fall apart. The East Stand, they wanted the dough. Stoke City, the bloody roof fell off, and then Arsenal, managed by a cowboy.
Well, yeah,
It's
absolutely.
mad, isn't it?
Well, it is, but
Mm,
it's a sign of it is the
yeah,
sign of the
not
time. If you,
footballing reasons.
yeah, but if you look at, when I was in Seattle, I got sacked there for earning
Exactly, Americans.
too much money, but
Mm,
it couldn't happen today. I've been back to Seattle since, and they got they use the backroom staff of the Seahawks, and they're professional teams now.
yeah.
Where our teams are run by amateurs.
Mm,
Uh, you've only got to look at Stoke City. Our club doctor was a gynecologist. I
yeah,
mean, basically, you can't get any. If it was on Del Boy,
yeah,
it was on Fools and Horses, you'll go, no, that can't be true. It's like Del Boy when the doctor said to him, "You get dizzy spells." He said, well, do you have problems passing water?" He said, "You have a dizzy spell coming over Battersea Bridge or something." And it was one of them. How can you actually have a gynecologist as a club doctor? Come on,
yeah, you can't.
and I think that says it all about the way football clubs are running in that. And I was thinking yesterday, with the last few days actually, when I was at Chelsea, I actually took my wife. I went into Sexton about a contract, and I ended up going to the film studios to see Richard Attenborough. Ask if I could speak to him,
Mm.
and I went there. He was making Young Winston at the time,
All right.
and that that new kid on the block. He brought the new kid on the block through to play Young Winston, and I went up to see him when they were filming that, and I just wanted to, ask him to speak to Dave about common sense.
Mm.
I needed. I told him, I had a new kid. I said, and I've had a couple of seasons in the team. I think I've earned a rise, and that was when Sexton said to me, "Put 6 England caps on the table, and you can start demanding." When I thought, well, this ain't right. This is
No.
not the way to run a football team. You don't pay players for what they play for their country. You pay for what they do for their club on a Saturday.
Again, that's the way management was in those days, wasn't it? Al? Pretty
It
much
was.
professional clubs run by amateurs. Have you got a
Yeah.
professional or an amateur cooking your Sunday or your Christmas dinner this year? And what's Alan Hudson going to be having for Christmas dinner? And where's he going to be sitting and eating it?
Well, to tell you the truth, going back to my car accident, and coming out of the coma and
Hmm.
coming out of hospital, I promised. I'm still trying to work out. I had a meeting when the car hit me, and I was walking home through the East End that night in Whitechapel. I was thinking about. I had a meeting the next day. That was the 15th of December. I had a meeting that day, and I never got to the meeting. Never knew how that meeting who the meeting was. I was writing for the Sporting Life,
Mm.
and I love my writing, and I was going to think I'm going to do all right at this game, and I never found out who I was going to meet the next day. So I made myself a promise never look past tomorrow.
Got you.
So I live for a day.
Yep.
I don't plan too far ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas, I have no idea about because for me, as you said at the start of the show, you're 73, but only had 72 Christmas. Not
Mm-hmm.
too many people can say that. Uh, I probably died over Christmas once or twice.
You probably
Yeah,
did looking back at your life.
I have absolutely no idea. That's the first time you've had me caught me on a question, Paul. There won't be no Christmas. Yeah, I've got this terrible cold, which
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
I've fractured my arm ridiculously, and I've got a bad knee that a doctor in a Chelsea and Westminster hospital badly let me down with.
Yeah.
I've complained at the hospital, and my knees getting swelling up day by day, and they don't give a damn, my
No.
friend.
Unfortunately, Al, they don't,
Uh,
do they?
No, they don't. I wish I had a.
Mm.
I wish I had a chimney and a doctor would come down it and sort my knee out. I'm not bothered about Santa Claus, mate.
Yeah.
Just give me a doctor to look at my knee, and that would be my Christmas complete.
So when you've had your Christmas dinner, whatever you're going to have for dinner, you're going to have a mince pie. Do you like the mince pies or a Christmas? You know, the old Christmas cakes that we used to have that used to put we used to put a shilling in the Christmas cake, didn't you? Or what it was.
Well, the way my luck is, mate, it would do my teeth right in with it, smashing out of my teeth. But
I'm sure some have swallowed the fucking thing over the years. What you in hospital
I
for?
think
Swallow
I'm.
the fucking shilling.
Yeah,
Filling or a shilling, not a fucking shilling.
yeah, Christ almighty. But yeah, no, I'm sure that if I can just shake this off for one day, I'll sit down and open it. I've got 2 or 3 bottles of champagne in my fridge. I
Fabulous.
think I'll pop one open for the likes of Chris Garland and Tommy Baldwin and Demps. I know it wasn't late. Chris wasn't last year, but it was
Yeah.
within that time.
Mm.
The lovely Tommy Baldwin, of course, the lovely Johnny Dempsey. You know, they were my people.
Yeah.
They were the people that played football, and just a pleasure to be around. You know, because football's not all about football. It's not all
No,
about being around great
it's
players,
about
and
people, ain't it, Al?
it's all about life's all about
People.
people. And
Mm.
it broke my heart with Johnny Dempsey, broke my Chrissy Garner, broke my heart, Tommy Baldwin broke my heart, and it really did it. You know, I do really take these things badly, and it plays on my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Bobby Charlton watching an interview with Bobby Charlton one night, and I don't know, you know, he said about the Munich air, talking about Munich, and he said it makes me feel a cheat how I got out and them kids died, you know,
Mm.
and a little bit of that does linger,
Mm.
and you think why, you know, um, um, and Graham Stoner said something last year, you know, about doing something with these kids, you know, these special needs kids, and
Mm.
he said for the time I in my life I doubted going to church. You know,
Mm.
it was, you know, that these things can really not change your mind, but I've always felt that way about it because one of my cousins was ill for many years, and but he plodded on it, and he was the funniest man on earth. He
Yeah.
hadn't have been ill, he'd have been, you know, he was as funny as. Probably, I'd have put him alongside Eric Morecambe. You know,
Mm.
he's a great kid, and Christmas is a great time of the year, but it is a time that, your words earlier on, it's a time of reflection.
Yeah. And Christmas pudding, not Christmas cake, is the word I was looking for. It's the old Christmas
Well, I've got a
pudding then.
Christmas cake in my fridge actually, but I'm putting the only thing I will be putting out. I might get a syringe out and put a little bit of caramel in it.
Absolutely. And it's a time for reflection. And we raise a glass to all those people that have not so much changed our lives, shaped our lives, but had a massive impact in our lives. And it is a time for reflection. It is a time for giving thanks as well. So we will raise our glass. Mine will be a glass of red wine. Yours will be a Crown Royal to all those wonderful people that we've shared memories with, and those memories that we keep recalling on My Life, My Music. So, Al, can I wish you a Merry Christmas, all the listeners a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll meet again, as Vera Lynn would say.
Yeah, we will, mate. Same to you, mate, and your family. A healthy,
Absolutely,
happier, and a wealthier New Year.
absolutely, 100%.
The health thing is the key word.
Most important thing. I messaged one of my former schoolmates and I said, let's hope that it's a healthy year next year. You all get a little bit older, and I think with the age, with the old, you get a bit wiser. I remember you said, "Oh, we're like two old men." No, 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 Paul. I must correct you. We're more experienced, and I
Correct.
always say that to my friends. We're not old. We're more experienced. With more
Absolutely.
experience, you look
Yeah,
back and health.
we're not a year older. We're a year more experience. As simple as that.
Absolutely, Mr. Hudson, we are. And can I thank you for being one of my mentors, mate? You've taught me so many things, not just football, but about life as well. So thanks, Al. And
Absolute pleasure, mate.
cheers,
We've
Mucker.
become good friends over these shows over
We
time.
we certainly have, Al. We certainly have.
All
So
right, pal.
brilliant. So see you soon, Mucker, and have a great Christmas. I'll
And
give
you,
you a
pal.
call next week. Cheers, Al.
Good,
Thank
good luck,
you.
Paul.
Cheers, mate. Bye bye now. Bye bye. Bye
Cheers,
bye.
pal.